Hello, I hope you're having a great day. If you don't know me, I am Naomi, food and health coach. I wanted to talk to you today about the reasons why it's so important and we have to think about our health differently today versus in the past. Because if you haven't realized, before things were not like, I have to go to the gym, I need to watch everything I eat, and it's become very much what we need to do now. And it was not something that was so prevalent in the past, but there are reasons for that. And we don't realize a lot of times what those reasons are. So let's get into it. I'm just going to talk about food and working out. I mean, it all ties together, really. And it depends on where you grew up, I guess. I know, I'm from the Dominican Republic, and thinking about how people lived there before, even now. I was having a conversation in my DMs recently about how people live there still today and how it's different from here. And although there are certain things that they have to deal with their health, is not the same as here in the US, at least like in the areas that I'm familiar with, right? So in the past, I'm talking years ago, maybe pre-computers, pre-jobs where they were super sedentary, there was just a lot of natural movement in people's lives. They had to physically move around to get things done, to get their basic needs met. They had to farm or they had to harvest. They were getting water from rivers. I know I'm talking about way back, and I'm sure there's still communities that do these kinds of things now. But they were getting water from river. They were hunting. They had to build things with their hands. They had to take things down. When they were cooking, they were doing things from scratch, which required them to move their bodies, like churning butter or chopping chicken. I don't know. They had to bend down and harvest certain things, to pull herbs and stuff from the ground. They had to plant those things. They had to water them. And usually there was no hose. It was carrying buckets of water. So as you can see, before, they had to walk long distances too as a travel method. There wasn't cars around, even if it was with animals, let's say a horse or a donkey or something like that. They also had to take care of these animals. So taking care of these animals was work, right? Physical work. I know I'm going on a rampage here, but you did not necessarily have to go to the gym and lift weights and all these things, because you were already being mobile in your everyday life just to meet your basic needs of eating, showering, bringing food to the table, doing some sort of work, buying the things you need for your home. All these things required some sort of movement from you, where you were lifting, carrying, bending, carrying children, right? There was no strollers or any of those things. So all of that movement counts for a lot. And this is why when I'm coaching my clients, not only including formal exercise, but also making sure that they're taking advantage of natural movement throughout the day, whether that's walking to and from the train station, getting off the bus earlier, going up and down steps and skipping the elevator. All these natural movements count for a lot, where they're not there anymore as much as they were. So now we have to be today, we have to be so intentional about moving our bodies, because we can literally sit in a chair all day and kind of have our needs met. they'll deliver food for you. They'll deliver your groceries to you. You can just control everything with your remote control. You don't even have to get up and turn the TV channel. You don't need to go to the stores anymore to buy anything. You can literally, sitting somewhere on a device, get everything you need. Everything. The amount of movement you do is like going to your door. Right? And now even work is remote. So commuting has been cut down, which I know is very beneficial for a lot of people. But the point is that we're not moving at all. You can literally live your life sitting from a chair the entire day. You can work, you can get your groceries, you can get food delivered. Practically, you can sleep on there, you can entertain yourself. So to get up and to move your body has to come with intent now. And these are great benefits, right? Especially as we live in such a busy world, which stress is another thing, okay? But it affects so much of our lives because we're not naturally moving anymore. Even like if you're walking around the grocery store getting your groceries and carrying grocery bags, like that counts for a lot. But also if we're not leaving our house in the morning, which would have happened in the past too, it affects our circadian rhythm, which is our wake and sleep cycles, which counts a lot for energy, which counts a lot for good sleep. It really, with the sunshine, with natural light, lets our bodies know when do we wake up, when do we fall asleep, when is it time to adjust our hormones to get this process done, to wind down to go to sleep. But with the devices and all that, and living our lives from home most of the day, this is also not happening. Okay. And then that's movement, sleep, not to mention all the added stresses of life, which I'm sure people in the past were stressed too. Okay. And then when it comes to food, we also have to be so intentional about it, because in the past, there was rarely any junk food. And if there was junk food, processed foods, all those things, it was still from Whole Foods that were coming from the ground that people were making. If it was a dessert, like for example, the Dominican Republic, they make desserts out of root vegetables, they make desserts out of fruits. So even so, that's a dessert. They made desserts out of coconut, pineapple, papaya, sweet potato, cashews. Like, it's still made out of Whole Foods, even if it's sweet. It's not literally chemicals being made in the lab. It's not crops being so genetically modified that our bodies doesn't recognize it anymore. So these companies now that are making these very processed foods are spending so much money making this food cheap and making everything so convenient, which is, I know convenience is a big deal, especially nowadays, but there's ways to do that, right? Everything's in boxes and in packages. So trust me, there's one thing that I love to remember. Like, if a piece of fungus or bacteria doesn't want to grow on these foods, this is why they can stay on the shelves for years and years and years, and they don't grow mold and nothing like that, is because it has no nutritional value. So even the simplest form of life, which is like freaking mold, doesn't want to grow on these foods because there's zero nutritional value even to feed mold. What makes you think that has any nutritional value and your body needs it and can thrive of it as a human that is multicellular, right? So we now also have to be intentional about food and how we're eating it and what we're choosing, because there's just a crazy amount of options out here that's not necessarily based on companies looking out for you and your health. Is basically a business where they're trying to get hooked on people. They don't care about you. They're trying to get people hooked on these foods to make money. And we need to realize this these distinctions. So then it's left up to us to make these choices for ourselves, to learn and discern which foods do we need, because there's just food overload, just like in everything else in our lives, with information, with sound, with noise, with everything. It happens the same way in the food space. So whereas in the past, you were eating directly from earth most of the time, even if it was dessert, even if it was fried food, even if it was cookies and cakes and all of these things, they were made differently. They were made differently. It was still from the earth. Like if you're making dessert, hey, Debbie, yes, it's so important. You were still making these things at home. If you were making cornbread, you were actually grabbing corn, right? If you were making anything, you were using real butter. You were using like flour that wasn't processed to a pulp, GMO, affecting all your hormones. So it's not don't eat this, don't eat that. It's thinking about the quality that it was before versus the lack thereof of now. There's no quality. So that's why it becomes so much more difficult, and basically another task that we have to learn and be mindful of, because the environment itself is not providing that for us. We innately know and knew what to do, but now we've been peppered with so much ease, so much comfort, that we are not just naturally optimizing our lives, like naturally doing what we're supposed to do. No, it's chemicals made to taste like real ingredients. Absolutely. A lot of these foods are created in laboratories. The chemists really examine the taste buds. So not only that, they become addicting, right? So when you're choosing foods, when we're making decisions, it just becomes a new level of learning versus it being innate and not having to think about it, because we didn't have to think about it because we were eating from the earth anyway. That's all there was. There was no package this and package that. And if there was, it was the actual whole foods that were pickled, that were canned, that were salted in actual natural processes too, to preserve them for the areas of the times of famine and low food, which we can get into too, because then that means that we weren't eating all the time, which we are doing now as well. We're just eating more often. There's less fasting, which affects our blood sugar. And like, that's like a whole nother conversation. But I really wanted to make a point of how before we didn't have to think about these things because we didn't have to. We lived our lives naturally that way, innately that way, because we were moving around and we were eating from the earth and everything was very minimally processed. And if it was processed, it was done in natural ways that benefited our health anyways, by pickling and canning and salting and all of that. Versus now, where if you choose to, you can live your life from a chair. You just need your phone and you order everything. You don't need to move. And that's why now we have to take action so intentionally and learn how to make these choices and it feels kind of like a chore in the beginning, because it's like, oh, it's just food. I don't need to move. Well, this is why in the past you saw 80, 90-year-olds in the family unit that can pull up just like a 30-year-old. Maybe they weren't as fast, but they could sure as well hang with everybody else. And you did not see this epidemic of very like people struggling with their weight, right? Too, because the 80-year-olds, the 70-year-olds, the 90-year-olds, they were still involved in taking care of the family. And I've seen this with my own eyes, because when I was in DR for a while, there was an 80-year-old man, part of the family, an uncle, who was literally carrying my suitcase. And, you know, I'm used to the people here. And I was like, oh, no, no, I got it. And he's like, got what? Both hands with our luggages. No problem. He's like, oh, no, I got it. And you saw him walking around with a whole ram of bananas. That shit is heavy. I carried that shit. I squatted that. It must have been like 50 pounds. A ram of fucking bananas. All right? No problem. Walking, chopping, doing all those things. All right? So if you live your life that way, it's no big deal. But it can become such a big deal when we stop using our bodies. And this, in the society we live in now, it just makes it so comfortable for us not to do that. And that's why it's such a mindfuck sometimes to get ourselves to do these things for us, because innately we didn't have to think about it. We just did it. It was life. You want to eat? You better get to work. You want clean clothes? You better get to work. You want water? You better get to work. Basic life needs. You had to move your body. You had to use your muscles. It wasn't just click, 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 click. Bing is there in the front door. And trust me, it's great. But then that means that we intentionally need to put in the effort to learn about what the hell we're eating and move our bodies. All right. If you guys have any questions, I am happy to answer them. I just really wanted to bring in some perspective as to why now in this day and age, we have to be so intentional about our health and thinking about things that pretty much were innate and second nature, and you just did them in the past. This is one of the reasons why. So I hope that helps in bringing perspective and making decisions for yourself and not feeling so bad about it, because we really didn't have to think about these things before. It was just done, and that took care of our health. All right. I love you so much. If you guys need support in actually making this intentional and habit building practices in your life for your health and your wellness, so you're a banging ass 80-year-old being able to carry a thing of bananas and going to twerk at a concert, I'm here to freaking help you with that. As I said earlier, if you were watching my stories, and I know if you're watching these recordings, there are 3 main areas that helps with healthy aging, and that is maintaining your lean muscle mass, which in turn preserves your bone health, because as you get older, you lose bone density and you lose your muscle mass. That's 1. 2, your metabolic health. That means the way your body uses and processes sugar, not going into that pre-diabetes stage. And these things also help with hormone balance, which is fantastic and very important as you age and you go through life transitions. And number 3 is continually reducing and getting your inflammation in check. As you age, basically, you just become more inflamed. Okay, so if you learn how to manage these 3 things at the very least, girl, you're going to be good for a while. But you need to keep this consistent. It's not this 6 weeks on, 1 year off, 5 weeks on, 6 months off type of deal. Like, you need to keep this consistent because your body's consistently aging. So you need to consistently be taking care of yourself. All right. So if you guys need help with that support, I would love to support you. This is what I do. This is what I'm passionate about. Again, I'm Naomi, food and health coach. If you guys would like to get in touch, DM me or book a consultation in the link in my bio. I hope you have a great day. Bye.